Thing that I wanted to talk about is mostly setting up folders within ACL, but also setting up some sort of naming conventions for things. And I thought a good way of doing that was to show you this slide here, and which is the ACL document that for those of you that have paid for today, you will be getting this with all the scripting. And what I've done here is I've set up a numbering sequence and a word type sequence that allows you to better organize your information. So for the most part, I have at the top there a folder called scripts, and then within that folder we have SOO, which is for the menu scripting, which is kind of the the menu that drives everything. Then SO1 is sort of the first type of script that we're going to work with, and that's the work paper export. Notice there by doing, SO1, SO2, SOO, it moves things to the top and sorts it in a way, but it also, by setting up and utilizing folders within the ACL document, it allows you to also be able to organize your scripts and tables a lot better. Now, so the scripts you can see, I've started everyone with an S. You could change this a bit depending on what you want to do. I will sometimes, if I'm running like an accounts payable job, I will have that as AP, so APO1, APO2, etc. And from a tables point of view as well, I like to organize scripts in that way where the tables are organized in a way where you have like AP underscore paid invoice file and AP underscore vendor master file, which I don't have here because we just had so few tables. But again, as you start to work with your tables and structures, that is something to consider. Another thing that as we walk, let me see if there's anything else. The other things that I would note here is that you notice in the work paper export, the file deletion, that there's a main and a sub. And just kind of, from a sorting point of view, if you have kind of the same words here, SO1, work paper export, but then main, and then etc. sub, the sub will always come after the word main. So it ends up putting it in a proper order as well from a scripting point of view. Okay, so again, folders, setting up your scripts in that defined way is nice. Then from a variable point of view, what I would say variables are items that hold in memory names like supplier name or hold flag or create date or whatever. And what I like to do is to assign both fields and other constants to these variables. So I guess you could also have a table in there as well, and I probably should have noted that in the above there. So where we have VT supplier equals VT supplier there. Actually, I believe that is not possible. So I want to note that you shouldn't do what I just did here. I copied that incorrectly. You want to have something like that. So you don't want to ever call a variable the same name as your supplier. That was a typo. But in there you have, say, variable. So assign the variable. Table, because we put a T there. Supplier equals supplier. Variable A for ASCII field. Supplier, because it's in the supplier table. Vendor hold flag. Assign variable date in the supplier table. Vendor enter date. Variable, numeric, etc. So you kind of get the idea here that we use T for table, A for ASCII, D for date, N for numeric, and C I actually use for constant, which are items such as in this case, a percentage or an interest percent or whatever that you could use a constant for. I guess you could have other names and numberings for these things, but this is something that helps me, and by putting the V in front of everything, it does help to kind of call that out. And what I find from a documentation point of view, that a couple of things that I do. I mean, one thing, I'll make a lot of videos of the work that I do for people so that for myself and for them that we could go back and better understand what was actually built. It's so much better to watch a video on what you did. Now, from an actual documentation point of view, to have a more of a structure like we were doing in the previous slide with the naming conventions of folders and files, and then also in your variable selection up front, it just makes it so much easier when you see v_d to know that that's a date, and then to continue onward into the actual analysis from there. I wanted to continue on and note that, of course, we have these ACL folders can be established to manage all the script work. And the way to do that, if you want to kind of set folder and tell ACL to put all of the files within a certain area of the ACL project structure, all you need to do is utilize that command there, set folder, and then you can see that there. So let's kind of go into that, and let me just use that. Bear with me one second here. So we have report output files. Let me go into ACL. Bear with me 1 minute here. And so now bringing over ACL, let me just close the script. Now you can put that into the script itself, or if you go to your window, show command line, you'll get your command line up here. Now, as I look at this, I do have my report output final files. Oh geez, and when I copy that in there, it obviously comes in with a lot of formatting. So let me just make sure that worked okay. Bear with me 1 second here. I think it came in at about 900 font there, so let's delete all that. And oh, it does it again, so I have no way out of this one. I tried to copy and paste it from my editor, but it just seems to not want to allow me to do it otherwise. Anyway, by copying and pasting the set folder command that we had in that slide and hitting the enter button, not only does it now set the folder to that report output final files, but if I end up, say, extracting this to a file called extracted, notice how that file is now placed within that report output final files. So, I mean, what you could do, and I mean, you can get as creative as you'd like to, is as you're doing your work here, say the keyword search, you could put a new folder out there called keyword search outputs, and then all of the results would be in that folder associated with the SO3 keyword search scripts that we're going to talk about a little bit later. So again, that set folder command, probably going to be easier for me to show this to you in PowerPoint. So let me go back to PowerPoint. This set folder command here is all we needed to use to make that happen. Okay, so continuing on with the discussion, I wanted to just talk about working within scripts themselves and converting Unicode to non-Unicode files and that kind of thing. So with all that said, let me move into the next slide here. And essentially what you can do is you can play around with ACL documents in a text editor. Make a copy of the ACL document or project, whatever you want to call it, first, just to make sure that you don't overwrite what you're going to be doing. And then what you can do is look for a lot of these different features within it, and we're going to do that in the ACL document that we have. What's kind of interesting though is that aside from looking for things like your scripts, which are called batches, and layouts, which are the table layouts, the input file definitions, the folders that you've set up, the reports that you might have set up, etc. By having all of that, you can really find things, and you can do it by looking for that caret mark, which is on most keyboards it's a shift number 6, so that's the caret marks pointing upward there. And what you can do is you can try your best here to, if you have a lot of different scripts in all these different folders, you can copy scripts around in ACL, and we'll maybe talk about that using ACL. But another way to do it is just to kind of update one massive ACL document with all of your scripts. And what you can do is just utilize a text editor to make that happen. So this would be I'm just going to clean this up and delete that there. So again, these are the scripts that we have. And let's imagine you wanted to copy into your scripts folder, you wanted to copy from another project, a script. This is one way to do it. We could go back. I got to find one of my past webinars here, but say the June 19th one, and we'll go into that script writing one. So you could bring over the stratification script as an example, and notice now the stratification script is placed here in this folder here. So let me delete that, but that is one way to kind of bring things over. Let's now talk about how to do this in ACL or in a text editor. So I'm going to just take this advanced scripting October 9th document. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to open up, maybe we'll just call this the edit copy. And what I can do is I can right click, and you usually have an option to open with. And at this point you're going to have to see what you can do here. Normally they don't come out, and you can browse for your program. I utilize a product called EditPad Pro, which is here, and you can get Notepad++ is a free version of like an EditPad Pro. You can use Notepad on its own. I mean, Notepad comes with with Windows, but I'm not really sure it's the best product, whereas EditPad Pro is a little more advanced. So if I just drag this file, into my EditPad Pro, it will open it up. And now that you've opened things up, you can see here we have the caret layout. And then, it continues onward and downward through all these layouts. It's very hard to read this stuff, right? It has various view information down below. It has a report information. What I'm ultimately looking for are my little scripts where they should show up. Now, this is all chronological, so I must have imported my vendor master file, then the employee master file, continuing on through this, some reports in here. But all of these things were kind of added in a chronological fashion over time. What I'm ultimately looking for are things like my scripts, which now come in. And it's probably stuff that I brought over a little bit later in the process. So what you can then do is, bear with me one second here. So I finally found the script here. This is the text matching script. And I can see that just by the caret batch that you have that script, and then it sets a parent folder ID. And if you go back and look for this parent folder ID somewhere in the document, you can, let me just kind of go previous here. You can see it's set here, and it's put in the SO3 keyword search folder. So that's where that folder where it remains. But what you could do if you wanted to copy these scripts, just script by script, you just wanted to copy each one of them out from this folder to another folder, what you could do is you can just take this information and copy it to a new ACL document. And by essentially kind of creating one here that has starting off here with this batch, what you'll want to do is go back. Let me just go back to this original one, and you can put that ACL at the top there for the 900. Then you have this batch here. Then you can have this batch here, continue onward. But probably what I would do is get rid of the parent folder ID. For right now, you don't need it. It'll just put it in the root ACL folder, and then you just carry on and copy your batches over. They used to be called batches in the old days, so now they're called scripts. But this is something where probably the easiest way to find all of your batches or scripts and move them over would be to go Control F and then to search for it, and then you want to look for the caret batch, and then this will bring you to each batch within your ACL document that you could then copy over to another text file, save it as a .acl, and bring it right into ACL that way. So again, I wanted to show you how you could do this using a text editor. It's probably not fully supported, and it's probably not the best way, to work with your ACL documents. But sometimes when you have a lot of scripts, or when you have a situation where you're changing from like Unicode to non-Unicode, one of the things I noticed is a lot of people will import the Unicode version of ACL, and in doing so, and I bear with me if I hope I'll be able to find this here, by bringing in the Unicode version of ACL, it creates a few words that you don't like to have in there, and let me see if I can find it. One of them being the root, and another one is locale basically is the other one. It almost looks like is local, but it's let me see. I don't know if it's in this book here, because this is the non-Unicode language reference, but what you'll end up doing is looking for the words root and isolocale, and and here is this isn't the root function I'm looking for. It's actually a Unicode type function, and when you open up the Unicode ACL document, just remembering back to the work that we just did here, you can actually just open up that ACL document in a text editor. So this edit copy one in a text editor. And if you were going from Unicode to non-Unicode and you needed to delete all those words, this is one way to do that. If you want to go through all of your scripts, mind you, and for some reason, keep in mind in ACL, let's say you wanted to change a particular word within your script here, so that I'm trying to think, the word tables to export, you wanted to change that to tables to exp, and that's it. One of the things that you could do is open up every script and look for the word tables to export and change it, or you could open up this edit copy version, make a copy in a text editor and make the change in the text editor. So then that way the text editor, you could make all of your changes in one place.